Wait, so the One Piece live action is actually good? Hey friends, and welcome back to my channel. For those who don't know, my name's Tifa, and today we are talking about the One Piece live action. Now, of course everyone was kind of anxious for this one. One Piece is such a big series, and whether or not the live action could actually live up to that was something that was quite doubtful. And Netflix doesn't have a really great track record with turning things into live actions. That being said, Alice in Borderland is a fantastic Netflix live action series which I highly recommend, and is very highly rated as well because it's good. So there was a lot of kind of anxiety and controversy surrounding the One Piece live action before it even started. And I think I was probably one of the very few people that had a little bit of faith in this live action series before it came out. You see, there were a few things that we were told prior to the One Piece live action being released, such as Oda being the one who chose the main cast, and also the fact that Oda was going to be on board with the entire series, giving final changes, any kind of little tweaks that needed to happen, and that he was the one with the final say. Honestly, I think if he wasn't so open and verbal about this type of communication, there would have been a lot more doubt. But because he was very open about his belief in the live action series and about his role within it, I think it kind of gave us a little bit more hope than some other live action series is. So Oda was the one who chose the cast, he was part of the production process, and he continuously talked about his faith within these actors, so it felt like this series could potentially be good, and it actually is. So let's jump into my review on the One Piece live action series and why I think the things that I do think about the series. So overall, I actually really enjoyed the One Piece live action series. I know everyone's gonna have different opinions, this is my personal opinion, and I enjoyed it. One of the things I thought would be the hardest to capture is probably the nostalgia aspect of One Piece. A lot of us actually did grow up watching One Piece. It is such a long-running series, whether you watch the 4Kids dub on TV or that you just watched the anime properly, if you watched it in Japanese, if you read the manga. A lot of us have had some sort of experience with One Piece, and I don't know, there's something about it that I guess, like the big three in the era that they came out in, obviously there is a nostalgia factor when you go back and you watch the anime. It feels like being a kid again watching those scenes, specifically for those like myself who watched it as a kid. Not only that, but Luffy is kind of a kid at heart in a way. He has such a big heart and he's such a sweet kid, especially in the beginning. Like, he's a sweet kid all the way through, but you know, he's quite young, and I think capturing that was going to be one of the hardest parts. For me personally, I felt that if they at least captured that aspect, then they did okay. But somehow the live action went above and beyond in that aspect for me, because watching the live action I felt like I was a 5-year-old kid watching anime on TV, watching One Piece for the first time. I kind of fell in love with all the characters all over again, and it was really interesting that they were able to capture that kind of nostalgia of watching it for the first time. It is a new medium as a live action, so of course there is that kind of aspect of watching it for the first time, but something like that, I feel like if you watched the Death Note live action or the Cowboy Bebop live action, we didn't quite get that. It doesn't feel like when you watch the anime for the first time, but this one did. So I really appreciate that, and that really does at least put it above a lot of other live actions in my personal opinion. There are a few changes within the story, but there aren't really too many changes or changes that feel out of place. One Piece being such a long series means there's a lot to pick and choose from, meaning that the main problem is condensing that story. So I do believe that the changes within the One Piece live action are mainly just condensing it. So the story of the One Piece live action starts off with Gold Roger and that sequence, which is amazing. Wow. There's a lot about that sequence that I actually did really like, such as the color grading for that scene, which made it feel like the parchment paper that you see within the anime as they tell the Gold Roger story. And then we end this season with Nami's story, the Nami Arlong story, which I think is the perfect place to end it, because that's kind of like, it's a big part of the story and it solidifies this main crew as well. And obviously there are other members that join the crew as we go along, especially with Chopper being one of the next ones. But I think it was just the perfect place to kind of end it going into the Alabasta arc. So really well done. It's the perfect way to end and start the first season. The show is 8 episodes, about an hour per episode, so you know, it's 8 hours worth of content and they were able to put that together really well. There's only a few things that were taken out or rearranged / changed because it is 8 hours. It's still a long period of time, whereas a movie would be much shorter and more difficult to create a live action for One Piece of. So I think they did a great job at that. Any changes are only quite slight or remove things that aren't necessary to that particular storyline. They did actually include a little bit more of Shanks and a little bit more of like kind of fights, a little fight sequence with him, I guess. But any changes just felt like minor changes that could have been extra detail or removed detail from the main story. The main point here is that the source material is almost exact, and the way that they've done it is really great because it just feels like the same story because those main points are all there. They haven't added in something random and unnecessary. Now, this is a series where I genuinely think that the cast carries the story here because we spend so much time with this crew on their ship just doing their thing. And Oda has previously stated that anything before the time skip is kind of filler in a sense, or just showcases introductions. It's, you know, it's very based off of the characters themselves rather than the story that's happening. And with that being the case, it means that the cast have to be well casted. I genuinely think Luffy's probably the hardest character to cast because he's just got such a bright energy about him, and you don't want that to seem too cheesy. It's a little cheesy at times, which is okay. One Piece is definitely a little cheesy in the beginning, but it has to feel realistic for a real life version of these events. His happiness needs to affect everyone else around him, but also feel realistic within the story. It needs to feel right, and it's very hard to capture that. I feel like happy characters are a lot more difficult to cast, but I think that Ineki, who plays Luffy, apologies if I mispronounced that, does a really, really great job. He just seems so happy, and he doesn't seem like stupid. Luffy is oblivious at times, but Luffy's not just an idiot, which I think that happy characters can come off as completely stupid depending on the way that they're acted. So trying to act as a character who he's not dumb, he's just a good kid that's just a little oblivious to things around him, and he's happy. He needs to be the heart of the team, and I think that Ineki really does a fantastic job of that. I didn't think we'd find a character that even looked like Luffy, so the way his mannerisms are really look and feel like Luffy as well. Even the way that he stands in some scenes is exactly like Luffy, so I think he's done just a tremendous job, and he feels like the character. He even sounds like the character sometimes, and it's very rare to find that from an anime to a live action, so I think he's done a great job. The rest of the cast are also incredibly well casted, even though I had my reservations about some of them in the beginning. I think that Kobe looks like he was taken straight out of the anime and just like plopped into the live action. He's a little taller than Kobe, but that's okay. That's a whole comedic thing within the manga and anime, but he does a fantastic job and he sounds incredible for it as well. Zoro, of course, played by the lovely Makanu, is fantastic in his role as Zoro. I think as soon as he was cast, I felt like this was going to be a good series and that he was cast perfectly. Makanu has been in a lot of anime live actions and he does a really great job of it as well. I know that he is a martial artist who trained with one of Jackie Chan's martial arts slash stunt people, and they have similar teams behind them, so when he was cast as Zoro, I felt like that was going to be a perfect fit, and seeing everybody else agree with that really just resonates with me as well. Nami was one of the characters I was most concerned about, probably because I personally adore Nami a lot. She was one of the characters I looked up to most growing up, but I think Emily does a great job and really showcases the soul of One Piece as well within this series. I know that she's a big fan of anime and she was already a big fan of One Piece, so it felt like she was definitely going to try and take care of this character, but you just never know with the writing and the direction they go in whether it will work for specific characters. I think she was well cast, she did a great job. The wig is a little off in episode 2 in one of the scenes, but other than that, everything else was well done, and I really appreciate the way that she played the character. Usopp is an interesting one that I also was a little unsure of. I felt like the casting was pretty good, but it was one of those characters, much like Nami, where I felt like I wouldn't know until I watched it, and I think he did a great job. It gives little bits of comedy that he adds to Usopp, as well as the heart to Usopp. Works really well. He did a great job. I think everyone did a great job. I don't know if there's really any more that I can say. But I think the one that surprised me the most was Taz as Sanji. Sanji is a character that is quite interesting in the anime and the manga. I feel like he's a little creepy at times, but you kind of get where he's coming from, and he does have heart. His backstory is a really good one and it's quite interesting as well, as probably one of my favorite backstories as well as Nami's. But his performance really did blow me away. I wasn't sure what to expect when he started speaking, and I liked the way he changed tones with the guys and then Nami. That change in tone in the way that he voice acts works really well for this character and creates that distinction, rather than, you know, in the anime and the manga we see the heart eyes and things like that. This is a really great way to showcase that. His little mannerisms in scenes that are only a few seconds, like when he looks back off the ship back to Barate and he's just a little sad, but he's also happy that he's on the ship. Just the way that's acted is so good, and the way that he portrayed this character was really wonderful and gave Sanji more dimension than I felt he had in the anime and manga in these scenes. Some of the child actors for the backstories though weren't so great, but that's okay. I feel like for the most part when it's child actors we're kind of like, yeah, okay, you're mainly just trying to find someone that looks similar-ish to the main cast, so even though some of them aren't that great, it still worked. It wasn't too bad that it took you out of the show. And I think Shanks was probably one of the most controversial ones. A lot of people didn't like him. I feel like the angles they gave in the trailer were particularly bad, but he wasn't so bad. He did a pretty good job. He has the heart of Shanks, so I really appreciated that. I hope that they just do it maybe a little better with wardrobe, and then I think we'd have less of an issue. I think the main issue was the hat was a little too small for his head, so it looked a little awkward. And of course Buggy is incredible. Honestly, when we get to more Buggy scenes in the future, that's gonna hold up really well. He does a fantastic job. But yeah, I think that this season probably wouldn't have gone so well if the cast wasn't so well casted. And even though there are some differences, I do think that they were all able to add more dimension to these characters as well. Oda has previously said that this is going to be his kind of last chance to bring One Piece to a wider audience, and I think he's done an incredible job of that. It's definitely worked. And his role within the live action has worked incredibly well, which I feel gives some people a little bit of hope for future live actions, but also kind of gives people less hope when it comes to some live actions such as the Avatar, The Last Airbender live action where the creators walked off set. Also, I want to add that the fact that they have some of the original cast, including Luffy's original Japanese voice actor, dubbing for the Japanese audience, really showcases how much the whole team kind of cared for this show. So I really hope that that remains the same for the future. I really don't know what else to say here because I just really enjoyed myself. I think it captured everything the way that it needed to and was a really good first season. I can't really think of anything that was too terrible or any cons to the show itself, other than some of the child actors as previously stated. Also within the first episode, we do have a Zoro fight sequence where he manages to slice a person in half and we see a bit of blood there. I feel like they should have kept a little bit more of that kind of blood sequence, especially for any Zoro scenes where he's actually slicing people for the rest of this season. It wasn't like too much blood, it wasn't like over exaggerated, it was a bit of blood that kind of felt right for someone who's a swordsman, so perhaps we'll see more of that next season. There are parts where the costuming could use a little work, or the wigs, or some of the CGI with Buggy is being just ahead, but for the most part it's pretty good. It's mainly just kind of nitpicking in a way. Personally, I'd probably give this like an 8.5 or a 9 out of 10. It was a pretty good live action series. One of my favorites so far. The number one on my list is still Alice in Borderlands. I think that was just done in such a brilliant way. So yeah, let me know down below what you guys thought of the One Piece live action series. If you'd like to see any more anime related reviews, then don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. And if you want to see more Japanese pop culture related videos, then don't forget to subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye. Also, I want to add that the fact that they have some of the original cast, including Luffy's original Japanese voice actor, dubbing for the Japanese audience, really showcases how much the whole team kind of cared for this show. So I really hope that that remains the same for the future.